G'day there, you're watching the Aussie BIM Guru, and today you've reached the third part of my tagging series where we're going to look at tagging by type in Vue using Dynamo. So we're going to be implementing a user interface in order to specifically tag certain things in a view. So thanks again to Sharon for her help in troubleshooting and testing this one. It was really helpful in figuring out how to optimize this script to reach the final part that we're in now. So in part 1 and 2, we actually developed two scripts. So the first one that we look at tags everything in a view, and the second one tags everything in a room in a view. So tagging obviously is a really boring task. Dynamo is great at speeding it up. So you can see we've been through the first two parts. In this one, we're going to tag everything in a view by room, but we're going to add a user interface at the end that lets us pick certain types of elements to omit from our tagging exercise, just to speed up the tagging process a little bit more again, but to make sure that we're not tagging too many things. So previously we executed the tag all. We've tagged everything in a view, and then we've sort of worked on optimizing our script in order to intervene and say that it has to be in a certain room as well. But now we're going to look at adding an interface at the end where the user can optionally activate this interface using a true-false condition, and then that will bring up a list of types that they can filter out of their final tag. So it's going to look a little bit like this. So we're going to be using a package called Datashapes to trigger this user interface. I do have some videos on my channel that specifically focus on Datashapes and how to implement it in your scripts, but I'll really quickly run through it in this video as well. So previously we've required these packages for the script to date. If you need a copy of the script as it stands right now, just send me an email and I'm more than happy to provide you the working copy that I used. But we will be introducing data shapes. So we're going to be specifically using the multiple input form ++ node in order to trigger a user interface optionally. And ideally, if you can use 2.0.3, great. If not, try to use version 2 point something. But without further ado, let's go back to our script as it stood. So basically our script currently was able to tag all elements in a view in a room. So if we run the script now in this particular view, it should tag all elements. But currently it's tagging probably a few too many things in the room. So my elevation's sitting a little bit back from where it was in the previous video. So you'll see that the mark is actually sitting back at the table. But I've only really shown the chairs and the table for a bit of context. I haven't shown them so that I can tag them all. So we actually want to have the option to say, tag everything except for the tables and the chairs. So we're going to give the script a bit more power and a bit more customization for the user to intervene and tell the script these things. So we'll go back to our Dynamo script, and what we're going to do is focus just on the back end of the script right here. So usually a user interface comes at the front of a script. This one's quite interesting in that a lot of things happen, and then the user interface intervenes at the last minute to change the pathway of our data. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So currently the way our script works is we end up getting all of our elements into this element here in the out node. Then we get the location of those elements, and we use this Genius Loci node in order to tag all the elements in our active view. And it's all triggered by this run it condition. So if this is set to false, nothing happens. The tag won't occur. So if I just undo this and just detag my view and rerun the script, we should get run it is set to false. So nothing happens. So what we can do is actually deactivate our tag all, and we can create an alternate pathway to a user interface to do something more specifically. Because the user may want to tag everything. Maybe they don't want to bring up all the types of families and say all. So we're going to give them a pathway. So we're going to make a true false or a boolean, and we're going to make this an input for Dynamo Player. And let's just call this specific tag. So this will let the user know that they're allowed to be more specific when this is set to true. We'll set it to true currently, but what we want to have happen here is if specific tag is set to true, we want this to be false. So we need to use a not node, which will basically reverse the condition of true to false. So when this is true, the other one shall be false. So currently if I run this, we'll see the same outcome. Run it is set to false. And so now we can trigger a different pathway using data shapes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to group all our elements based on their family. So we need to get the element type of all these elements that are visible in our room, in our view. So we're going to get element type, and we'll just extract that. and we'll get a list of the type of every single element. Now, obviously we have more than one occurrence of each of these elements. For example, we have a whole bunch of chairs that share the same family type. So we want to group these together in our interface. We don't want the user to have to pick every single element one by one in the interface. We want them to be able to sort of batch select certain categories of elements. This way we can do other things like not tag outlets, for example. So we can be specific about what categories we tag to. So what we're going to use is a node called group by key. So we'll just search for group by key. So the way that this works is based on the keys of a list or the key values that are fed into here. The other lists that the keys are extracted from will be broken into sublists based on those keys. So the key that we're looking at here is the element type, and the list is the elements. So if I run this, we'll get two lists. We'll get one called groups and one called unique keys. So if we look at our groups list, you can see that all of our instances have now been grouped together based on their element type. And our unique keys are basically just each of those types. So nice and easy. So now we can really focus on these by their type rather than their instance. But we still have the instances as sublists in this groups node. So we're going to go and call on our Datashapes user interface now. So we're going to have to build a list view for our user interface. So we're going to look for UI list view. And the only things that we need to worry about giving to our list view are the name of the list view, the height, and what we call keys and values. So keys are what the user interface will show us, whereas values are what will be pushed through the interface in the background. So in this case, our values are going to be our groups. So if I say pick the key of row 1, or let's say row 2 that comes up in the user interface, which will be the chair type, what will get fed through is this sublist of these chair instances. So we don't have to see the chair instances, but we can push them through in the background. So our keys, we're actually going to go and use the family type name node just to make this a little bit more legible for the user. So we're going to do family type by name. And this will just make this a little bit more clean. Actually, I might need to check. Okay, family type name. That creates a family type. There we go. No, sorry, I'll just check my browser for it. Name of family type. There we go, family type name. So if I run this, you'll see that we'll get a slightly more friendly version. So this is just the type name of your family. If your types don't have good names, maybe you might want to append the family name on the front as well. But obviously this is a much longer piece of text for the user to read. It's a very long phrase and it won't be very friendly to look at. So I'm just trying to simplify how much data they see. But what's important is all my types begin with my code. So this is much easier for a user to understand what they're looking at. Okay, so this will be my keys and my values will be my groups. We'll just give a name as well. So I'm just going to create a code block and we'll just say select types to tag. And I'll just make the height 800, which is a pretty high user interface component. This is how high the button will be. The rest of these all had default values, which are all fine. One of them actually sorts as well, so it will order the names based on their alphabetical order. So that's really helpful. And it's good to understand that if your values get sorted, your keys get sorted in the same way as well. So you won't have any issue with things not being in the same order when you send them through the interface. Okay, so what we're going to do now is call on a UI++ or a plus user interface. And we're going to be feeding in this as our input. So it only has one input in this case. But the thing with data shapes that's really important is you still need to create a list for your inputs anyway, because this node is expecting a list to work over, even if you've got one. As this on its own doesn't represent a list of elements, it's just an element. So it's quite important. Okay. And we'll just create some information for our user interface. So we'll create a name for it. So we'll just say selectively tag is the name of the interface. Our run button, we'll say run. We won't have a cancel button. And we'll be 1100 high and 600 wide. These all just come with experience, these numbers. Feel free to play with them and see what suits you. So we'll set our button text to run. maximum height 1100 and width 600. It's important that your maximum height's a little bit bigger than your forced height of this component, because otherwise you will end up with a scroll bar on the side of your interface, which makes it slower to use. Okay, so I might run this, but the last thing we need to do is we need to assign toggle, because user interfaces by default, when set to false, will give us a prompt that says set toggle to true. So they behave similarly to that other node. They won't run unless they're being told true. So as you can guess, probably, we're going to be feeding this up to do we want to specifically tag. So when this is true, this is false, and then our user interface is told to open. So what I'll do is just save and run, and there's our interface. We see all the types of our families, and let's just pick our chair and our tables and run. So you'll see what comes through is the sublist of those elements. So that's brilliant. That's exactly what we want, because what we're going to do with this list is flatten it. And this will give us all the elements that we actually want to tag specifically as a flattened list. And there we go. We can see this is what we're going to tag. And we'll get the location of them as well. So we'll do get existing element location. We'll just do get location. There we go. That gives us the location. We'll just turn off the preview so we don't see all those dots. So now we have a list of locations, a list of elements, and as before, we're going to go and get another copy of this. Create independent tag node. And we're going to keep a couple of things connected. So we're going to keep our tag type connected and our view connected, because we're still in the active view and we're still using our same tag type. The only difference is our run it, our tag locations, and our elements. So our tag locations will be here. Our elements will be what comes through our user interface, and our run it will also be connected back to this option to specifically tag. That way, when this is false, we don't even try to tag anything at the end of our script. This will similarly say set to true and will not run. So that's pretty much all we need to do at this point. This should now work and also give the user the option to intervene and selectively tag. So I'll just quickly run it out of Dynamo, and then we'll run it out of Dynamo Player. So a really quick update to the script, obviously, but a really powerful one. So let's just observe what happens in this view when we run this script. With Datashapes, it can be good to sometimes refresh your script by just closing and reopening to refresh the user interface, because the user interface can have trouble rebooting in the same session. Okay, so first, let's just do a tag without specific tag on. It will tag everything it sees in the view. And it will still behave the same way it did before. It will try and tag everything. So I'll just do a save and a reboot. And instead, we'll try it with the user interface activated instead. So now I'll turn specific tag on. I'll run. And I will tag everything except for my chairs and my tables. And there we go. We can see that now we don't get any tags for our chairs or our tables. And it's much easier for us to filter through our tags and just move the ones that we need for tagging purposes. You could obviously change the positioning of your tags vertically by assessing the bounding box of each of these elements as well, and getting the location with a vertical height as well. In this case, I'm not going to do that in this video, but it's a suggestion for how you could potentially improve the script. But let's run it out of Dynamo Player just to fully prove the business case works. Okay, so I'll just open up Dynamo Player and we'll just navigate to our script folder. And in this case, I've called it demo script. I'll open up the inputs. Anytime. And you'll remember that the room by default is set to this room. If you're doing another room, you'd need to select a different room in the inputs of Dynamo Player. So this is where you'd pick your different room, your tagging parameter, and your tag type. How far past the walls do you want to reach in order to hit elements within the room? So things embedded in walls, for example, or just on the boundary. And then this is our new option we've added to specifically tag. So we'll just say we don't want to specifically tag, run, everything in the view will be tagged, or we can specifically tag. and we can run, and we can pick everything except for, let's say we only want to tag our pin boards for some reason. Let's just say pin boards, which are here, and there's only 2, and there you go, we get 2 tags for our pin boards. Nice and easy. Obviously you can keep running this and just tag particular elements at once, so we can just do our power and data, and just do those together as a set. And you can see how quick this can be to just keep running over and over again in order to undertake quick tagging exercises. So I can tag my joinery. There we go, nice and easy. It's a good way to avoid tagging things side on as well in some cases. Obviously this one's going to be a very lazy tag. I'm just going to tag my bin. But the reason I'm doing this is that it's important to notice this list is getting smaller as I tag more and more. That's because the script is filtering out things that are already tagged. So you can see the power of this script really coming together now, and just how flexible and easy it is to run. It's almost like a little plug-in tool the way it feels to run. So I'm really happy with how it turned out, and hopefully it helps you in your tagging as well and makes tagging a little bit less boring for you. So there we go. That's pretty much the script in 3 parts, all polished. So hopefully you enjoyed that. For the true automatons out there, the people that want to be absolutely robotic and make things as smooth as possible, you could run this in multiple views at the same time. Have a look into Datashapes and the All Elements in Views node. There's other ways to do it with Python rather than just using active view only. And you can still feed these into the final destination nodes as well. It will be slower, but it will obviously do a lot more in one click. So hopefully that's helped other people get a few ideas. If you have any comments or feedback or requests, feel free to leave them in the comments section or get in touch with me by email. So thanks for watching today. If you're not already following and subscribing, feel free to do so, and feel free to let your friends know about the channel. Always happy to share ideas with other people and teach more people about Dynamo. So thanks for watching today, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Take care. Bye.